We have breaking news out of New Mexico. A judge has dismissed Alec Baldwin's involuntary manslaughter trial after a motion from the actor's defense team. Baldwin faced charges for the 2021 accidental shooting death of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins while on set of his film Rust. The film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, was sentenced to 18 months in prison earlier this year on similar charges. I want to bring in now CBS News legal contributor and Loyola Law School professor Jessica Levinson. Jessica, you just jumped right on this because this is some breaking news for us. How much of a surprise is this to you?
It is a surprise. Absolutely. If you'd asked me last night, I would not have expected it. I was able to live stream the events of the day. And I would say as the day wore on, you saw that this was becoming a more and more serious issue for the judge. So briefly, what the defense said last night is we have to dismiss this case because there was evidence that the investigation and the prosecutors ignored, and that they needed to think about that evidence, which is a good Samaritan who was friends with Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's stepfather, bringing in ammunition to the police and saying, I think, or the county sheriff, excuse me, I think this has something to do with the Rust investigation. Apparently that was not pursued. There was a dramatic hearing throughout the day today. And what the judge said, as we now know, is that the case is dismissed. I understand with prejudice. That's a fairly extraordinary thing to happen because we thought this was just going to be the next big day of testimony.
Yes, and let's talk a little bit more about why the judge dismissed it with prejudice, why she was so upset with the prosecution in this case. The defense alleged that in addition to they're alleging that the prosecution tried to hide this evidence, hide these bullets under a different case number, that they failed to disclose additional evidence that's all required by court, by just the very basic understanding of our legal system. All this is supposed to be disclosed to the defense. Why would the prosecution fail to disclose all of this key evidence?
Well, what the defense is saying is that basically they hid it, that they found their target and they decided not to pursue. And of course, I'm paraphrasing here and I want to be careful, but that they decided not to pursue other investigatory avenues where they should have. And what the defense is arguing is they hid this information. They logged it under a different case number. It should have been logged under the Rust case, and that they basically buried it. And they buried it to the consequence of the defense not being able to see it. And that is serious. Those are serious accusations. And we see, frankly, how serious that is in the judge deciding to dismiss this case. So that was essentially the allegations. The prosecutor, I understand, and having watched it, said, this is the first that I've heard of this, said that this is a wild goose chase. There's no there. It doesn't affect the case. Those weren't the bullets that we're talking about. Obviously, that was not the argument that won the day here.
All right. I want to thank you, Jessica. I'm now going to bring in Tre Lovell. He's an entertainment attorney. He's also been watching all of this for us. So, Tre, you heard what Jessica had to say about the judge's decision to dismiss. I'm also going to quote Judge Marlo Sommer. She said the state is highly culpable for its failure to provide discovery to the defendant. In addition to these bullets, there was also apparently reams of information that was disclosed just on the night before the trial actually started. How unusual is it for this case to be a case like this to be dismissed with prejudice? And for our viewers who maybe don't understand what exactly that means, discuss how this means, what the implications, I guess, are for Alec Baldwin.
Sure. So when you say you're dismissing it with prejudice, that means you can't bring it again. The court has a choice to dismiss it without prejudice, which means they could refile it and do it again, or with prejudice, which means they can't. In this case, it's with prejudice, which means it's over. There is no more. You know, the prosecution broke the cardinal rule of not sharing evidence with the defense and hiding evidence based on allegations of what the defense was saying. Taking evidence, taking bullets that were critical to the case, that had they been followed up could have led to some other very serious evidence, and not only didn't follow up, but disregarded and put it in a separate area under a different file number. I've never seen anything like this before. This seems to be very blatant.
And Tre, we should also mention that there is already a woman who is spending time in prison. 18 months, I believe, was the sentence for Halyna Gutierrez-Reed, the armorer. She had a manslaughter conviction just earlier. You see her there on the screen. The prosecution tried to compel her to testify. The judge said, no, you can't do that. Is any of this dismissal of Baldwin's case going to have an impact on her case?
You know, I think it really could, because the evidence of how the bullet got on set is really more relevant for her case than it's for Baldwin's. To be honest, Baldwin's was more how he handled the gun at the time of the incident, because he was never accused of having brought the round on set or even having loaded it. But how those rounds got on set directly is relevant to Gutierrez. And had they known this information when Gutierrez was tried and they didn't provide it, this could be exculpatory evidence, or it could have led to exculpatory evidence. So I think this could be a strong grounds to have that case, appeal reversed and a new trial.
And your mind goes to the question of the ability to mount a good legal defense. Baldwin, obviously well-resourced. Somebody like Halyna Gutierrez-Reed doesn't have the same depths of wealth to pull on in terms of getting the very best legal team. She had a conviction. He was able to get it dismissed. Does this point to greater questions, both about how the prosecutor's office is functioning there, but also about how we treat people who are accused of crimes?
You know, it's true. I mean, money, wealth, the ability to get bigger law firms, you know, potentially better attorneys, that's always going to play a role. You know, I never really like to compare lawyers in this because everybody's, you know, doing their job. But you know, the law firm that Baldwin hired is a big law firm, and they're great lawyers, and they had a lot of resources, and he has a lot of resources. So they were able to take advantage of that and really put on a great defense, as we just saw.
Yeah.
So sure, money comes into it. That's been a factor in our legal system for a long, long time.
And obviously through this all, Halyna Hutchins lost her life, her family, her friends still grieving her. How does all of this play into their ability to potentially pursue other legal recourse?
Well, I think the family did pursue civil recourse, and there was a settlement, at least with the husband. And there may be other civil actions going on, and this may be from an evidentiary perspective. But this is just you know, really, really amazing with respect to this criminal trial. This is a high-profile trial, which really shouldn't have been brought in the first place. I mean, you know, when you really get down to it, you know, the argument that an actor doesn't have a duty, you know, for set safety, you know, you can really support that. And had the defense gone into it and even put on their case, I think they really would have convinced the public that a movie set is much different. You know, so to bring this case against Alec Baldwin, I think it was overreach. What happened here almost kind of, you know, supports that, because, you know, when you're bringing in live evidence, you know, live ammo, evidence that's relevant, and could lead you down another path to somebody that may have culpability. You know, you don't know, but it certainly is strong evidence. And to give it to the other side for them to use, when you choose to not only follow up on the investigation when that happens, but then almost hide it, put it into a separate category, separate case file, whatever it is, it really shows that, hey, we wanted Baldwin. The prosecution had its eyes set on Baldwin. They didn't want to take the time, you know, to really look for somebody else. Even when they did the search on Seth Kenney's prop house, you know, it was at night where they got the search warrant. They just didn't seem to check every box. You know, they really weren't looking like they wanted to find the truth and pursue all avenues. And I think the judge saw that. And that's what really got the judge so irate.
Given that, Tre, is it possible that there might be additional repercussions for prosecutors or investigators?
Well, I mean, there certainly could be ethical problems, you know, in terms of how they handled the case, and if there was, you know, any intent. There can't really be, you know, civil action. You can't really sue a prosecutor. You know, they have immunity, and everybody will have immunity. But you know, there certainly could be repercussions within the judicial system. You know, they are public servants. It is their job not to convict Baldwin, but to find the truth and pursue the truth and provide the defense with every opportunity to do the same. And when they start doing picks, start picking winners and losers, and start taking actions that are very inconsistent with that, it really goes to the heart of the judicial system. I think right now people are getting more and more skeptical of our judicial system. With what's happened with politics and things like that. That this just doesn't help. We need our judicial system to be such that people really respect and can trust and have credibility. And this is just a link that undercuts that, unfortunately.
And Tre, this was a bizarre case in some ways. Talk to us about some of the dramatic moments that we saw, including one of the prosecutors resigning.
Yeah. I mean, the prosecutor resigning. Even the cross-examination of the case technician, of the crime scene technician. I mean, they got her to admit when she said on direct that she checked every box for sure. He got her to admit that she was wrong, that was inaccurate. I mean, they were very effective on cross. They had a lot of ammunition, no pun intended, to go after the prosecution. With the mistakes they made during the investigation. This revelation. That it just kind of built itself, on a hill of questionability. So I think that it's very surprising. I personally thought that it may not get dismissed, but there may be some severe repercussions in terms of jury instruction that really helps Baldwin, or maybe some restrictions of evidence that could kind of counterbalance what happened. But this judge wasn't having it. This judge is like, it's egregious conduct. This is an affront to the system. It's gone. This case is done.
Yeah, she was not mincing her words when it came to her decision to dismiss this case. For all of our viewers who are just joining us now, we want to bring you this breaking news that Alec Baldwin will no longer face trial in that New Mexico courtroom. All of those charges against him have been dismissed by the judge. They were dismissed with prejudice because, according to the defense attorney, they successfully argued that the prosecution had held on to evidence and had withheld it from the defense. In particular, one of those major issues was that there were bullets that were not disclosed. They were filed under a different case number. And so as a result, the defense team of Alec Baldwin was not able to access any of that. In addition, the defense argued that there were reams of evidence that were just disclosed to the defense on the eve of the trial, not allowing them to then mount a proper defense. The judge certainly agreed with that, dismissing it without the ability now for prosecutors to bring charges back. We are talking with Tre Lovell. He is an entertainment attorney. He's been following all of this for us closely. So, Tre, you said at one point that this case never should have been brought. And certainly that is a sentiment that has been mirrored by many. Explain to our viewers what the prosecution was trying to prove and why they thought that they had a case and why so many others felt like they were really making this personal.
What they were trying to establish, and which was, a big fault of theirs, was that the movie world is the same as the real world. Is that you're going to have the same duties and obligations in the movie set, on a movie set, than you are in the real world. And that's just not the case. The movie world is extremely different. In the movie world, everybody has duties and obligations. The actors act, the director directs, the armorer is in charge of gun safety. And everybody's required to do their job for there to be safety and for the set to run smoothly. When you start requiring an actor who's not an expert to start being in charge of set safety, gun safety, you have now taken the expertise from the expert and put it with the non-expert. And we don't want that because we want to make sure that it's the expert that's making the final decisions. Where would it stop? I mean, let's say that the next scene is an actor driving a car and the brakes fail and he runs over an extra. Is he now going to be charged with vehicular manslaughter? I mean, should he have checked the brakes before he got in that car? What if somebody's using pyrotechnics and they use a grenade, happens to be a real one or something wrong with it. You see, is that actor or actress supposed to know what is a grenade and not, or a real grenade or not? It just, it opens up Pandora's box, which was why I think Hollywood was really watching this case, because Screen Actors Guild took a tough position that an actor has no duty, and that is in the agreements with the production companies.
Do we know, Tre, how that actual bullet made it into the gun?
From what we understand, Gutierrez did put the bullet into the gun, supposedly thinking that it was obviously not a live bullet. I thought there was some contradictory testimony in terms of who gave the gun to Baldwin. Was it David Halls or was it Gutierrez? I thought that there was some distinction there. But I think, it's pretty clear that Gutierrez did load up the gun, but just did so carelessly and had mixed rounds and ended up with a live round, and we know what happened.
Tre, where do we go from here? We mentioned that the case, at least as far as it faces Alec Baldwin, is over. Is there likely going to be additional actions that are taken now?
No, well, I think the case against him is over.
Right.
And what's going to be of interest is what Gutierrez does now, because they're going to take full advantage of this, and they can use it for her appeal. And if this case is dismissed based on prosecutorial misconduct, the same prosecutors, largely the same evidence used in Gutierrez's trial, that's going to be interesting. She may have a very good chance of getting that overturned. And certainly, I think, the prosecutor is going to have some other issues, that they're going to have to take care of within the judicial system, in terms of what happened. Like, there may be ethical issues. Who knows? I don't want to, guess too much on that. But in terms of right now, the case against Baldwin is over, but our eyes are going to go on Gutierrez now.
Yeah. Hannah Gutierrez Reed is currently serving 18 months in prison for her role as the armorer, having faced some similar manslaughter charges. She was, there was some question heading into this trial about whether or not she was going to testify for the prosecution. Questions about whether there was going to be some sort of deal struck with the prosecution when there wasn't one. Ultimately, the prosecutors tried to compel her to testify. She was not interested in doing that. Talk to us a little bit about that aspect of this case, Tre.
Yeah, so the prosecutors wanted Gutierrez to testify in this trial. One of the reasons is she had made some statements to detectives that she should have loaded the gun better, or she should have checked it better. She should have done a few things that actually would help Baldwin, because it would take more of the culpability from him and put it on herself. Now, Baldwin's team would be able to introduce that evidence at trial, because even though it's hearsay, it's subject to an exception called declaration against interest. So they were going to be able to use those statements to read to a jury. But the prosecution, unless they called her, couldn't cross-examine on it. So they couldn't try to get, their efforts in there. And so, in terms of trying to get her to testify, the first thought was, okay, you can testify, but we'll give you immunity. So whatever you use, whatever statements you make can't be used against you, because in her appeal, if it gets reversed and she gets a new trial, whatever she says in this trial without immunity can be used against her. So she's very vulnerable. So it was very important to her and her attorney that she not be forced to testify here. So what was going to happen was they were going to call her anyway, because when you take the Fifth Amendment, it's not blanket immunity. You can't say, hey, I've got an appeal, I can't talk about this. It's a question by question analysis, because some questions may not be subject to the immunity, may not, be in a position that's going to incriminate you. So it would have been a question by question analysis in terms of how they would have probed with her. But, it turns out that, she probably would have showed up, got on the witness stand and pled the Fifth, more or less. So I don't know how interesting or relevant that part of her testimony may have been. It may have been just objection after objection.
Certainly was dramatic, though, leading up to this trial. We want to thank you, Tre Lovell, entertainment attorney, and especially for your insights on how she may use this to appeal her case. I want to bring in now Elise Preston. She has been inside the courtroom. She joins me from Santa Fe. Elise, We saw those images just a little bit ago, and I'm hoping that our control room can play it again, of the moment when Alec Baldwin heard the judge say that this case was dismissed with prejudice so that it could not be brought for him again. You were there. We saw him crying. What more can you tell us about that moment?
I just want to go back, Lana, and start at the very beginning of the week, because the disposition that we saw Alec Baldwin walk out of the courtroom today, the disposition that we saw him actually in the courtroom all day, was very different at the start of the week when pretrial motions were getting started, when this jury selection was getting started, when we were hearing opening testimony. Alec Baldwin, he was kind of hunched over. He seemed very concerned. And throughout the day, as this day unfolded, you would look up and he kind of had a smirk on his face. Like, you could tell that his, I guess, outlook on it was a little positive. I think he felt like, okay, there's something here all day. But this has been a very dramatic day. And I've been here again in the courtroom all week. This, as you can imagine, is the most dramatic. But even the vibe inside the courtroom, if you will, it felt different. The jury was supposed to hear from Halyna Gutierrez-Reed, as you just heard earlier today. So people were inside thinking that it was going to be a dramatic day, but what a turn of events, right? So we start out around 8:45 with this motion. We knew that the defense had filed a motion late last night, but no one knew exactly what it was until we got into the courtroom. And we hear that the judge, or excuse me, that the defense wanted the entire case tossed out over this ammunition in question. And so this motion begins. And so then the judge calls in the jury and she dismisses them until Monday morning. So we're all still kind of like playing this out. They bring in witnesses to testify as to what happened. And this is what we gathered. So there was a gentleman by the name of Troy Teske who, during Halyna Gutierrez-Reed's trial, came in and said, hey, I have this ammunition that might be pertinent to the case. And the defense says that they never got it, that they never heard anything about it. They believe that prosecutors intentionally buried that ammunition for this case. So that is what witnesses testified to the entire day. They talked about the chain of custody. They talked about what bullets were, where, what was on the rust set. So you heard all these different testimonies. And then at the major stunner, I think less than an hour ago, the prosecutor, Carrie Morrissey, who we've seen all week, we've actually seen her for months because she was also the prosecutor who prosecuted Halyna Gutierrez-Reed, she called herself to the stand, and that was a stunner. And even then, the judge was saying, you don't have to do this. And Morrissey said, no, I absolutely do.
So many of these dramatic moments in court. I'm going to quote again from Judge Marlo Somer when she was dismissing this on that point that you were talking about, Elise, of the allegation was that they mislabeled this ammunition under a different case number so as to bury it. The judge said, quote, the late discovery of this evidence during trial has impeded the effective use of evidence in such a way that it has impacted the fundamental fairness of the proceedings. She says if it doesn't rise to the level of bad faith, quote, it certainly comes so near to bad faith to show signs of scorching. Are we hearing anything more from prosecutors about their conduct, or from the investigators about these allegations that in some ways transcend even just the question of Alec Baldwin?
Well, part of the reason why Carrie Morrissey called herself to the stand, her co-counsel was gone. I saw her leave the courtroom, and I wasn't sure if she was sick, but her eyes were red, and she had tissues, and she was kind of dabbing her eyes, and I didn't know what was going on. This was about 2 hours ago, but we found out during Carrie Morrissey's testimony that her co-counsel actually resigned as these proceedings were going on. She resigned about 2 hours ago. They were questioning a witness, and then Erlinda Johnson asked if she could approach, and they were discussing this, and then we just saw her leave. But no one knew exactly
Elise, for people
what happened until...
Elise, sorry, just for people who haven't been following this, Erlinda Johnson was that co-counsel that you were referencing before. So,
yes,
so continue then.
she was the co-counsel. Linda Johnson was the co-counsel. She gave the opening statements in this case. They bounced back and forth between witnesses. She always approached, she was very engaged, right? They were definitely a pair throughout this entire trial until about 2 hours ago when she resigned. And we found out about that resignation as Carrie Morrissey was on the stand.
Did we learn anything more about Johnson's reasons for resigning?
So we have not. I saw her again walk out the courtroom, tissues in hand, dabbing her eyes, and I have not seen anything or heard anything from her since.
All right. And we were talking, of course, about Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, the armorer who is currently serving a prison sentence, having been convicted for manslaughter. Any more insight into how she is faring?
Well, that is something we are actively trying to figure out, Lana. Again, she was going to be called to testify. I know that she was in the middle of appeals process, and she is not in prison right now. She's actually in custody of the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office. So she was expected to be called today, but I have not seen her. She would have entered into a different entrance, but that is something we are certainly looking to find out. Her attorney was supposed to be in the courtroom. We did not see him. Carrie Morrissey actually said that she wanted to call Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's attorney to the stand in these motion hearings, but I have not seen him today.
All right, Elise Preston, really remarkable work there for us inside the courtroom, as we have learned that Alec Baldwin's criminal trial has been dismissed.